your way。平等營商環境下嘅競爭可以促進經濟發展。
對我哋消費者嚟講，梗係多啲選擇比較好啦。
我來貨平啲，你又買得抵啲啦。
想創業冇問題啊！
價錢、質素都有得揀。
中小企都可以擴展。
點突圍啊？你諗多啲新嘢咯，有競爭先有進步。
競爭條例維護平等營商環境，有利市場發展。即刻上競爭事務委員會網頁睇下啦。
Babies are unpredictable.
Wait.
But their parents think they know them best.
Go!
But do they really?
Do she like pizza? She likes a patch on her eye.
Sunday, Bet on Your Baby, Season 2, at 8:35 on Pearl.
There is a calamity coming. It will affect us all, gods and men. I need your help, Perseus.
What am I meant to do?
You will learn someday that being half human makes you stronger than a god.
Weapons!
Sunday, Wrath of the Titans, on Pearl's weekend blockbuster.
Student activists outline strategy to put more pressure on Beijing to rethink political reform. Republicans take control of U.S. Senate and promise to make things tough for Obama. And American football player avoids jail time in high-profile child abuse case. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Civil Human Rights Front is planning to hold a march to the central government's liaison office on Sunday to press for Beijing's withdrawal of its political reform framework for Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Federation of Students will issue an open letter to call on some local figures to help them arrange a meeting with the central government officials. Ronnie Samtani reports.
Leaders of the Hong Kong Federation of Students are determined to speak with Beijing officials about political reform in the SAR. The students hope that former Chief Executive Chung Chi-hwa, who is now Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, as well as Rita Fan, a local member of the National People's Congress Standing Committee, will help them arrange the talks.
If the Hong Kong government officials refuse to have the responsibility to solve this problem, we believe that Hong Kong people and Hong Kong students should have this responsibility directly to talk to the Beijing officials.
The move has raised concerns that this would lead Beijing to tighten control over Hong Kong if it believes the local government is incapable of controlling the city.
I do not believe that the few student representatives to visit Beijing will bring a tighter rule to Hong Kong. If the Beijing really brings a tighter rule to Hong Kong, the only responsible person should be CY Leung and the central government.
The student leaders haven't confirmed when they will go or who will be sent on the trip. The Civil Human Rights Front, meanwhile, plans to hold a mass rally from Chater Garden to the central government's liaison office on Sunday. The group wants Beijing authorities to meet with the student group. It will also demand that Beijing retract the political reform framework set by the NPC Standing Committee in August. But the rally organizers are still waiting for a letter of no objection from the police. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
Well, there's still no consensus among the pan-democratic camp over the call for lawmakers to resign and trigger a de facto referendum on political reform issues. Pan-democratic lawmakers met with students groups this evening to discuss the proposal, but representatives from Scholarism, the Hong Kong Federation of Students, and the Civil Human Rights Front were unable to come to an agreement with legislators on the matter. According to sources, the student leaders support the idea of forcing a referendum, but other parties have concerns about the focus of the referendum and possibly losing their veto power in LegCo. As Liz Yoon reports, the only one Democratic Party lawmaker has agreed to resign so far.
The Democratic Party announced that Albert Ho has agreed to resign to propel the pro-democracy movement forward.
But he said that to do so, he need to have a theme which would make sure that it would be linked to the vote in the Legislative Council. And that would, of course, give the voters a lot of impetus, because whether they want you to vote for or against the theme, they will turn out to vote. So that's one of his conditions.
League of Social Democrats Leung Kwok-hong said he has to discuss with his party members to decide whether he would give up his seat in LegCo.
Since the Beijing and SAR government claimed that the majority of the Hong Kong civilians support the resolution which was made by the People Congress Standing Committee in the late August, I think the de facto referendum will give a genuine opportunity for all of the voters to cast their vote to say yes or no.
Meanwhile, Labour Party's Seat Ho doesn't think it's a good idea for Pan-Democrats in the geographical constituencies to resign.
If 5 Pan-Democrats resigned from the Legislative Council right now, then we would not have enough vote to veto any resolution proposed by the Legislative Councillor. We are worried that the pro-establishment camp would take further measure to take a tighter control on the rules and proceedings of the Legislative Council.
Ho added that in order to resolve conflicts within the society, it is important that different civil groups and pan-democratic parties unite together.
Meanwhile, Executive Councillor Bernard Chen stressed that such a de facto referendum is not legally binding. Chen thinks it's not likely to reach a consensus on whether the referendum is appropriate, as it involves the use of public funds. Liz Yun, TVB News.
The new People's Party, meanwhile, has met with the Chief Secretary to discuss ways to increase the democratic elements of the proposed nominating committee for the 2017 Chief Executive election.
The government could do so by reducing the 60 votes available to agriculture and fisheries and give them to youth bodies and women's bodies as well as small and medium enterprises. If the government could do that, that would substantially broaden the electoral base of the nominating committee.
The party has named the Federation of Students as one of the bodies that could be given a vote, since it has been long established and its representatives are elected. Former Hong Kong Governor Christopher Patten has lashed out at the SAR government for a lack of leadership, as well as Beijing and the UK, over the continuing Occupy protests. But Patten's comments are drawing fire from a former Xinhua deputy director who says the former British governor has no right to speak on the issue. Diane To has the story.
The last colonial governor of Hong Kong was among those attending a parliamentary inquiry into Hong Kong's political development. And he had strong words to say about the SAR, mainland and British governments at the hearing, which looks into the implementation of the Sino-British Joint Declaration 30 years after it was signed.
I think what's happening in Hong Kong at the moment is an extraordinary lack of leadership, because there are things which the chief executive and the government could do in a statesmanlike way in order to try to persuade the pro-democracy demonstrators to get into a serious negotiation and to call off this stage of their campaign.
Patten also criticised the British government for not putting pressure on Beijing over the issue, saying it should not just be worried about damaging trade relations. And he described China's actions as spit in the face of the joint declaration over its obligations to Hong Kong. But closer to home, a former deputy director of the Xinhua News Agency in Hong Kong, Zhang Junsheng, spoke out against these remarks. In the SAR for a forum with media veterans, Zhang said Patten should stop commenting on Hong Kong issues, saying that many of the problems Hong Kong has right now are in fact left behind by the former governor. Zhang also spoke about the student protesters, saying many of them don't know much about the nation's history. I believe many of the protesting students aren't actually against the government in their hearts. They just don't understand the basic law, he said. Zhang insisted the mini-constitution clearly instructs the nominating committee to be broadly representative, so those who are against Beijing's framework set for Hong Kong are not very reasonable. Diane To, TVB News.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry mentioned Hong Kong and human rights in China in a speech about the U.S.-China relationship yesterday. Next week, Kerry will accompany President Barack Obama on a visit to Beijing to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting.
Of Johns Hopkins University School
Before leaving Washington for Beijing, John Kerry hinted about what's at stake for upcoming talks between U.S. President Barack Obama and President Xi Jinping.
The U.S.-China relationship is the most consequential in the world today, period. And it will do much to determine the shape of the 21st century. That means that we have to get it right.
Last month, Kerry and Chinese State Councillor Yang Jiechi tackled a long list of issues that continue to complicate relations between their countries, which together account for 1/3 of the global economy. Near the top of that list for next week's talks will be U.S. claims of cyber spying on American firms by the Chinese government and military. And the Obama administration is trying to assure Beijing that it is not trying to contain China as it rebalances American foreign policy toward Asia amid territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Another source of friction is Washington's stance on China's human rights record.
The United States will always advocate for all countries to permit their citizens to express their grievances freely, publicly, peacefully, and without fear of retribution. That's why we've spoken out about the situation in Hong Kong and human rights issues elsewhere in China, because respect for fundamental freedoms is now and always has been a centerpiece of American foreign policy.
Beijing claims that foreign forces are helping to orchestrate pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, claims that Washington denies.
For the first time in 8 years, Republicans have won control of the United States Senate. Analysts say the outcome of midterm elections is the direct result of voter discontent with President Barack Obama. Sonia Artero has details.
Republicans rolled out big victories as midterm elections wrapped up Tuesday night. Riding a powerful wave of voter discontent, Republicans got the numbers they needed to seize control of both houses of the U.S. Congress. Republicans picked up at least 7 Democratic-held Senate seats. The outcome assures Republicans of at least 52 votes in the 100-member chamber. Also retaining their majority in the House of Representatives means Republicans have tipped the balance of power away from President Obama. With an opponent-filled Congress eager to block his liberal policies, Obama can expect a rough ride during his final 2 years in office. House Speaker John Boehner reacted humbly. He said they'll skip the celebrations to get busy on priority number 1, fixing the nation's struggling economy. Boehner also vowed to build a stronger Republican House majority, and Senator Mitch McConnell is next in line to assume that role. The Senate Minority Leader's campaign for re-election in Kentucky was one of the most watched races. He easily survived a challenge from Democrat Allison Grimes.
Too many in Washington have forgotten that their job is to serve. So tomorrow, the papers will say, I won this race. The truth is, tonight we begin another one that's far more important than mine. And that's the race to turn this country around.
That's exactly what voters faulted Obama for, his failure to recover from the 2008 recession. Americans also fear Obama is not doing enough to stave off threats by the Islamic State terror group and fault him for missteps in the Ebola debacle in Texas. Despite the GOP's congressional victory, voters hope to see cooperation between the White House and the Capitol.
Well, there's something I'd like to see happen in particular. Yes, whether it's because of the election.